the agenda? If not, I ask for a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
That motion by Ms. Kamet,
Yes, sir.
second by
Olivia Oxendine.
Dr. Oxendine. Thank you. Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Chasteen,
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Motion carries. We have an agenda. Thank you. We'll now proceed to our committee meetings. Note for the record, the board will take a roll call vote for all items requiring action on the agenda at the conclusion of our committee meetings. And we'll begin with the Business Operations Committee. I'll call on Mr. Alan Duncan, Chair of the BizOp Committee. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you. On behalf of Todd Chastain and I, we have BizOp 1 today, which is the fresh fruit and vegetable appropriation of federal funds. The grant has been awarded in the amount of $4.74 million to the school nutrition section to be distributed to 219 elementary schools selected throughout the state for the coming year that are in areas of greatest food scarcity. With that in mind, we can be glad to give additional details, but you'll see the schools that are awarded, that were selected, are attached in your materials. There were a few schools that were not awarded because they did not meet all the criteria. Dr. Lynn Harvey can answer any further questions if there are any, but in the interest of time, I will leave it there unless there are additional questions. This is good news. We have further support for helping our students who are impacted most heavily by scarcity. Any questions or comments? All right, if not, then we would ask that this be voted upon as action on first read. And Chair Davis, thank you, and I return it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. And now call on Dr. Oxendine, Chair of the Educator Standards and Practice Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. On behalf of myself and Ms. Amy White, we have one item on the agenda for this month. It is a consent item. It is merely a technical update with regard to a couple of licensure tests that the State Board of Education requires of teachers, I should say. And the information with respect to those changes is located in your material. Just to give you a very quick thumbnail, one of the exams is the Praxis CKT Math Subtest, and there is a test change code. You can see that in your material. The other licensure exam is the Praxis Teaching Reading K-12, and we have a code change also with respect to that test. There is also a change in the cut score for the Praxis Teaching Reading K-12, and that cut score is changed to 156. That was vendor-driven, and it was based on a multi-state standard setting score study that was done a few months ago, I think in March 2019, and 3 panelists from NC served on that very important committee that determines cut scores for these licensure exams. So that is that's the essence of this consent item. And I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. I'll now call on Ms. Amy White, Chair of the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee. Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Davis. This is Amy White, and I serve as the Chair of the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee, along with Ms. Jill Kamnitz. We have multiple items for your review today. The first is EICS 1, Action on First Read. This is a request from North Carolina Cyber Academy to increase its enrollment by 20% by general statute. I'm going to call on Mr. Dave Machado to review this information for you. This is a new request separate from the request on our action item from North Carolina Virtual Academy. Mr. Machado.
Thank you, Ms. White. And again, North Carolina Cyber Academy is requesting to be able to increase their enrollment by the 20%. They are one of the 2 virtual charter schools authorized General Assembly. According to statute, their enrollment is capped at around 2,500. They are asking, but State Board of Ed does have the ability to allow them to increase their enrollment by 20%. This was reviewed by Charter School Advisory Board, and they unanimously voted to not recommend this amendment request. So CSAP does not is not in favor of this amendment request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Machado. And I do believe that the reason stated by the Charter School Advisory Board was related to the school's recent decision to uncouple itself from its current operator. And based on the numbers provided in the executive summary, the numbers projected for enrollment for the coming year wouldn't quite reach that 20% extension. And so, board members, do you have questions or comments for Mr. Machado about the CSAB unanimous vote to not approve this recommendation at this time? Okay, hearing none. At the time of the vote later today, I am going to be recommending that the State Board of Education approve the Charter School Advisory Board recommendation that we not approve this particular request at this time. I would like to have it stated in the minutes that once the school has an additional year or a first year under its belt without its operator, that they, if they so choose, send another request to us at the appropriate time. Moving on to EICS 2, this is an action item that we heard last month for North Carolina Virtual Academy's request to increase enrollment by 20%. Mr. Machado is available. Does any board member have a question about this particular action item? Hearing none, I will be recommending that we approve that recommendation at the time.
Amy, I apologize.
I'm sorry,
Mr.
Duncan.
Yeah, I had left it on mute, so I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
I had one question that would be helpful for my understanding in any event. Is it accurate that NC Virtual Academy's assigned grade has been D over the last 3 years and has not met expectations any of those 3 years? Or
Yes.
is that inaccurate?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. Well, that will be part of my thought process in voting on this. I hope that they will focus on getting to a place first of meeting and exceeding expectations of the students they have, without trying to give the added burden of having to take on a number of additional students while still having that challenge before them. So anyway, I did want to make sure I understood that correctly. Thank you for that information.
Chair Davis, I'd like to ask a couple of questions to Mr. Machado.
Sure, Ms. White's running this.
Ms.
Oh, sorry, I lost track of where we were.
That's Ms. Kamnitz, yes.
So just to clarify, the CSAB did recommend that we approve this increase in enrollment. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that vote was
Unanimous.
unanimous. In the past, has CSAB and the state board been in the position of a brick and mortar charter school that asked for an increase in enrollment with a D or F grade? Has that come up before?
Well, because a charter school, brick and mortar charter school with a score of D or an F can grow up to 20%, that CSAB has not had to make that recommendation to the state board. And again, CSAB felt like this school should be treated like any other charter school and be allowed to grow that 20%, and that's why they brought it to state board.
Thank you.
Any further questions, board members?
Ms. White, this is Eric Davis. Are you asking that this item be voted separately or together with the rest of the action items? Mr. Duncan?
Yes, I would ask it to be separately. I say that with thanks to the CSAP because I know how hard they work on these, but in viewing it as from the perspective of how we get the best results for our children in this particular instance, I would have trouble voting for this expansion. So, yeah, I would ask it be separate.
Right. Okay. Sorry, Ms. White?
Thank you, Chair Davis. The next item is EICS 3. This is Queen City STEM Schools' request to increase its enrollment over 30%. If you'll remember this discussion from last month, Queen City is adding high school grades. Any board member have a question for Mr. Machado about this action item? Hearing none, I'll be recommending that the State Board of Education approve Queen City STEM Schools' request to increase its enrollment. Board members, there are several items for our consent agenda. Just running briefly through those, Two Rivers Community Schools' request to amend its mission statement. This is in review. It's just a technical correction with some grammar that needed to come before us. EICS 5 is MENA Charter of Lee County's request to implement a weighted lottery. If you'll remember, we approved them for their charter application, and this is that weighted lottery. They also were one of the recipients of the $26.5 million from the federal government. EICS 6 is Willow Oak Montessori's request also to implement a weighted lottery. EICS 7, Evergreen Community Charter, request to implement a weighted lottery. EICS 8 and EICS 9 are the two restart applications from Chatham County Schools. Does any board member have a question about any of the consent items on the agenda as proposed today?
Ms. White, it's JB.
Yes, sir, Mr. Buxton.
And I'm struggling to find my notes. I'm very supportive of these requests for implementing a weighted lottery. One of them, and Mr. Machado may know it off the top of his head, I believe had a range in their application. They requested a 30 to 50% range for the weighted lottery. Did I read that incorrectly? I'm thinking it might have been Evergreen. My question is, if that's correct, is just how we assess their fidelity to their request. If it's a range, are we really just saying 30%?
That is correct. That is
Question, Mr. Machado.
okay, that is the range, and what our office is doing on all weighted lottery requests that are approved is we are monitoring the increase in EDS population and asking them for information on how they intend to market the EDS population, and then we are looking at the data to see how close they are getting, and if they're not, they need to submit a reason to our office and CSAB. But to answer your question, that range is, we're expecting no less than that 35%, and we want to see them get to that 80% as quickly as possible.
Got it. And so it may be that I just found it. It's 30 to 50% of students in each grade level. So maybe they have a clearer goal than 30 to 50.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. White.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. Board members, questions about any of the remaining items? Hearing none, Mr. Chair, that completes our committee meeting for today.
Thank you, Ms. White. Our final committee meeting of the day is the Student Learning and Achievement Committee, and before I turn it over to the committee's chair, The one item before us this morning concerns the implementation of the new reading diagnostic tool. Board members will recall at the meeting in which we approved the superintendent moving forward with negotiating the final contract for this tool, the board expressed concern about implementation, and I would compliment the superintendent and his team for moving quickly on developing an implementation plan for the summer period. In the recent week, we've received much feedback from teachers, literacy facilitators, principals, superintendent, parents, and so forth about the implementation plan, and have in fact received 2 other suggestions, a 1-year training plan and implementation a year from now, and then a 6-month training plan with implementation in January. So those are some options we have before us today that I'll ask Mr. Buckland to lead us in a discussion and consideration. I would remind my colleagues that this item is more than just simply a decision about a tool. It's really a decision about the signature education policy of the state of North Carolina for this decade, Read to Achieve. No other policy have we stated, if we state our reputation as an education state than on Read to Achieve. We've invested over $150 million in this important program, and it's received a tremendous amount of effort by our teachers, our principals, our superintendents, and all members of the education team. Unfortunately, the results have not met our expectations or our students' needs. And so while we've offered suggestions, many of which have been well received, to improving this policy and program, there's still much work that needs to be done. So that's the context I think we ought to consider in this next discussion about a successful implementation of our reading diagnostic tool. So with that, I'll turn to the chair of the Student Learning and Achievement Committee, Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your underscoring the importance of the discussion. I chair the Student Learning and Achievement Committee along with my vice chair, Dr. Olivia Oxendine. I want to be clear as we get into this discussion that we are having this discussion not because of the choice we have previously made of a vendor for reading diagnostic, but because of the timeline we face to implement the reading diagnostic. And so I want to put a few kind of facts on the ground on the table, and then, given that we have some recommendations that have been given to us by leadership in the field and from another source, walk the board through a discussion of the choices that we're facing. And I would ask you to think about this kind of agnostic of vendor right now, and think about this from the perspective of our teachers implementing systems, our principals implementing systems and assistant principals, and our district personnel, and what is our best foot moving forward to support children to reach reading proficiency as quickly as possible, along the lines of what Mr. Davis mentioned earlier, the importance of this effort to our state and to our communities. So the first thing I would remind us is that the board did approve Superintendent Johnson's recommendation to move to iStation as our reading diagnostic assessment. This was in response to state statute requiring the state superintendent to select a vendor. Following that choice, there was a directive to bring back to us the training schedule, and as the chairman has said, we've had, I think, a lot of hard work by the department to put a schedule in place. We are faced with the fact that year-round schools are beginning in North Carolina on July 8th. So we have a implementation plan that is not just aggressive, it is highly compressed. The rest of our schools will start roughly around August 26th, and so we are looking at a quick implementation plan, and that is the root of much of the feedback that we have received to date. A few more facts. There has been a protest filed with regard to the award by Amplify. We have received a request from superintendents to delay implementation to the fall of 2020. And evidently there has been some suggestion, I believe, from iStation that has come through a few different channels that implementation could be delayed to January 2020, with training taking place over the fall of 2019. I've not received that from iStation, but that evidently is out in the public sphere right now. I believe that may have been made to our department. So it appears that we have three options on the table, all which carry different levels of risk to the importance of the reading diagnostic to our instructional program and to reading proficiency in the state. One would be to proceed with full implementation, training of teachers and full implementation beginning essentially July 8th in our year-round schools and late August in other schools. The second option would appear to be a delayed implementation to January of 2020, given that our current contract runs out, I believe, in August. Then I think we would be without a tool, and I will ask the department to comment on this in a moment, but without a tool for the fall, training would occur on the iStation tool and then full implementation beginning in January of 2020. Or a third option, which would have us extend the current contract through the year to keep a tool in place and to do training and installation of the new tool over the 2019-2020 school year, and then begin full implementation with year-round schools in July of 2020 and the rest in August of 2020. So those three options are sitting on the table for us to discuss. And I want to ask a couple questions to start this out and then open the floor to board members. The first question I want to ask is actually to our counsel, Mr. Snyder, and that is to understand the timeline we might be facing with the protest that's been lodged. And the reason I ask that question is trying to understand the risk that if we move to full implementation of one tool, if that protest is successful, is it possible that after another RFP we could then be implementing another tool in the following school year? So just any information for us about what that timeline looks like for a protest?
Sure. Thank you for your question, Mr. Buxton. Naturally, with any piece of litigation, one really needs to get out a crystal ball. Sometimes protests and contested matters can resolve quickly. On other occasions, they can last a significant amount of time and can drag on longer than folks typically expect. So I think in this case, the protest that Amplify has offered, while it sounds like the department will vigorously defend its decision in deciding upon iStation, could last into the next school year or into the winter, or could resolve relatively quickly. We don't know, but it is an outside risk that in the event Amplify were to succeed in its protest, that there could be possibility of implementing a different tool in upcoming school years.
Okay. Second question is for the department and either for Superintendent Johnson, for you, or for Ms. Galloway or anyone else that would be best positioned to answer, is just understanding what a January of 2020 implementation looks like relative to what is happening in the fall. What happens with supports for teachers on diagnostics and training for MOVE? What are the tools that they're using through the year? And then also what a training schedule would mean for a 1-year delay, and what it also means in terms of the tools. So if you could talk us through what those two situations would look like.
This is Superintendent Johnson, and I apologize if hard to hear. I'm in my car and I pulled over, so good. I pulled over so we could have this conversation. Need to clear some things up based on your introduction. Let me just inform everyone as to what is going on, because I don't think the way you described it is exactly what choices are in front of us. On Monday of this week, I was actually in Asheville with the local superintendents. The North Carolina Superintendents Association had a meeting, and we discussed the Read to Achieve implementation. I put before the local superintendents that we could actually have a delay for the measuring of metrics. So we could actually continue with the trainings that are already going on. There are live webinars going on right now. Those webinars will be on demand. Teachers will be able to access those starting next week and learn about the diagnostic. But we fully agree that this is a very, very, very fast turnaround for a new tool. So what we would like to do, and what we offer to the superintendents, is continue with the trainings. iStation will be in the schools starting in this school year, but the metrics measuring will not start until the middle of the year. So that means for the year-round schools, I believe that means December. So no metrics are going to be officially used for any kind of growth statistics until December. And for traditional calendar schools, that means January. That actually would allow teachers to take part in the trainings that are going on right now, but then also get into the classroom, and students and teachers can all become familiar with the new tool before we would actually turn on the metrics in January. And so we have run this by everyone in the department who takes part in these measuring of metrics. It has all been confirmed. I have run this by legislative leadership, and I've run it by the local superintendents. I've worked on this with iStation, and it is my understanding that the North Carolina Superintendents Association has already actually made the board aware that they do support this plan.
I'm not aware of that. This is JB. All I'm in receipt of is a request to delay a year. So if there is an official support of that, that's great, but that's news to me.
Okay.
Yes, JB, this is Eric. Let me comment on that. So I have received both. I've received both the communication from the executive committee of the Superintendents Association on the 6-month plan, and also communication from the executive director of that same organization, as well as superintendents across the state supporting the 1-year plan. So we've received both.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Buxton.
Please, Dr. Oxendine.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Johnson, if you would go back and help me understand I think you said there's a possibility or a probability that the collection of data could begin in January for the traditional schools. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And for further background, that is actually the way it's done in kindergarten already. It's already done that way in kindergarten. In 3rd grade, the data actually comes from the EOG. So this would be a change for 1st and 2nd grade. And yes, we have run through the department, and this would not affect growth statistics, and would be an amazing opportunity for teachers to do the trainings now, but they would be able to actually use the tool, and everyone will be able to have that learn as we use, and then not worry until the metrics until January.
Is it possible to delay the metric measuring? I can already formulate an answer, but I'll ask anyway. Is it possible to delay the the collection for the metric 1 year and use this year as the implementation, developing efficacy around the system, becoming knowledgeable, competent on the system? And
I do not believe you'd have any metrics for this year, and there are probably just too many other statutory obligations that require those metrics.
So, Mr. Buxton, I have another question if I could tag on.
Please, ask all your questions.
All right, so it is my understanding then that the system is being, iStation and the components of iStation are being installed in schools as we speak. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right. And the teams at DPI have been working around the clock for a successful implementation.
And so the status of M-Class, as iStation is being installed and training is commencing, M-Class, and I don't know if there are any devices with M-Class. M-Class, it has been retired. Is it being retired as we speak?
M-Class is being used through the summer reading camps, and then the contract between the state of North Carolina and M-Class does expire, I believe in August, but we can get you that exact date. So yes, the contract between the state and M-Class expires, but I've already answered to districts that if they do like M-Class as a tool, they can go procure the tool for themselves.
I suppose what will help me make my final decision on this is being certain that the superintendents are in agreement with the January commencing of the data collection for measuring growth and determining achievement.
Well, I believe Chairman Davis just said that he heard from the North Carolina School Superintendents Association that they are supportive of that.
Is that correct,
Yeah,
Mr. Davis?
I've heard both requests, both the 6-month request from the Executive Committee of the Superintendents Association and support for a 1-year delay voted on by 88 superintendents, and it was unanimous.
Chairman Davis, just to be clear, because yes, I also received the letter yesterday morning, but since that time you have heard from the North Carolina School Superintendents Association that they are supportive of the 6-month plan.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I've heard support for both recently, as of today, and so it's not that I've heard support of the 6-month plan instead of the 1-year plan. I've heard support for both.
One clarifying question, Superintendent Johnson. I understand you say the metrics will not be collected for growth purposes. What's the data that our teachers will have to inform instruction? Will they have that from iStation beginning on July 8th in year-round schools?
I would absolutely assume so. If Tara is available, or if we need to wait to actually hear from iStation, but I absolutely would assume so, because it would be implementation of the tool for teachers. All that data would be available for them. As we discussed, it is a great tool, and we're excited about having it in our schools. But the actual data point of kicking off when we measure student growth would not actually happen to the middle of the year. But I absolutely assume that the tool itself would be fully functional, and teachers would be able to learn it. They would have access to the data. They'd also have access to all the lesson plans that come with the tool, and all the on-demand trainings. And and they would actually be able to learn using the adaptive content for students, and then that adaptive content being able to print out the reports for teachers and help personalize instruction, at the same time giving more time for teachers to teach.
Dr. Galloway, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Dr. Galloway, you on the call with us?
I am. This is Tara Galloway.
You would talk about what is available to our educators for data to inform instruction, and then also, if we're going to start July 8th and then later in August, what supports they have on the tool so they can begin using it in earnest immediately.
Right. So it's already been discussed that we have a
Dr. Galloway, pardon me, Dr. Galloway, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Oh, come up there.
Give us 1 second. We're just resituating her so that you can hear her clearly in the mic.
Good morning. This is Tara Galloway. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So it has already been discussed that we have a very aggressive implementation plan, and we've already started moving forward with that plan. The webinars would continue, and some of the focus of those webinars after they get the initial webinar would be to then inform instruction using the data. So we would continue moving forward with that, and Superintendent Johnson was accurate in saying that we would have the data that teachers could then use to inform that instruction. That's what this tool is really geared for, and that's what we will be able to train the teachers to do well. iStation has worked very collaboratively with NCDPI in making sure that all of those things are in place. All of the trainings are already open on the website, on the landing page. So yes, we could definitely incorporate the data to inform instruction into that plan. It's already in place. And I think the other question was if we move forward with July 8th, we actually developed 2 of the face-to-face trainings for those year-round schools. So we have one training on July 2nd and another one on July 8th for those year-round schools, and they would not need to immediately assess the students in July. We would get them to practice using it, and then their first initial using the tool would actually happen in August. So the timeline is a little bit misunderstood, and we would work with teachers and provide all of the support necessary.
A follow-up question, if I may.
Yes, Dr. Acton.
Dr. Galloway, could you give me some sense of how much of the state will you have? I know the webinar modality is very different, but on the ground training, if that's part of the training package in the school, in the classroom, let's say by October, how much would you have covered in terms of geography, number of LEAs trained?
By October, all of the teachers in every school would be trained. They will have access to all of the webinars online, but they also will have one person at each school who is considered a campus leader, as well as a district leader who will be the trainer for each campus. So that person will take the 3 to 4 hour training back to the schools and implement that with the schools in a 60 to 90 minute session just to get started. And then we will follow up with trainings after that will show them how to use that data to inform instructions. But just to get started, right, the initial training for all teachers across the state would be 60 to 90 minutes.
So by October, or sometime in October, let's say by November, the entire state, 115 school systems and charters, teachers in those schools and charters will have gone through the initial phase of training with the devices. Yep. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Dr. Oxendine, this is already going to happen potentially before any students even walk into school. We have been very aggressive with the timeline, and that is why we commend the team at DPI working so well with the team at iStation. We will have all schools, every school that's using this will have one person that goes over the summer to an in-person training, and they will receive a stipend for doing that. And then they will go back And this is something that can happen in the week that teachers come back to school. It is a 60 to 90 minute training session. So to answer your question, no, it's not October, November, it's August.
By
What we
August
want-
16th.
What we want is to make sure that teachers have the fall semester. So September, October, November, December, they will have already had the training. We want them to be able to ease into the use of this tool so they can truly learn it with their students, see the great reports that they can get from this tool, see how those reports can help inform instruction, and they can do this without having to worry if those metrics are being used for all the other accountability metrics that are in other laws that have everything to do from growth to teacher bonuses, all of those, that will be on the table in the fall. So the training is already going on, and this is about hearing the needs of the districts and respecting the fact that this is a new tool, that this is an aggressive timeline, but acknowledging that this tool is intuitive and it is a 60 to 90 minute training, and then I believe teachers will find that they will be able to pick it up, and students will pick it up with ease, and also being able to use it in practice for months before the metrics are officially measured.
All right, thank you very much. I do have, sorry.
Let me give, Dr. Oxton, let me give you another question, then we'll make sure we get other board members who have questions.
All right,
and also,
okay.
for our advisors who have joined, I'm going to ask any advisors to weigh in who would like to just talk about their perspective on implementation. But first,
Very
Dr.
good.
Oxton.
I apologize for all of the barrage, but I've been barraged with emails, as my colleagues on the board have too, and that's one that has two, and that's the reason I'm asking so many questions, to help me really, really make the best decision possible. So, Dr. Galloway or Superintendent Johnson, are the superintendents aware that this training is happening right now? They know that, for all intents and purposes, the training phase of implementation is underway. Do they know that? Are they aware of that?
Yes.
Yes. We have sent out training schedules to everybody, and a lot of the superintendents came through the training session in at Asheville at the Superintendent's Quarterly and actually heard more information about iStation. And most of, all of the comments we received were well received.
All right, thank you.
From those who learned more.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. Other board members, questions, please.
Mr. Buxton, this is Ms. Kamnitz. I do have a couple questions.
Please, Kamnitz.
Just to make absolutely clear, what we're hearing, I think all of us are hearing, board members and anybody else, is not a concern about iStation itself. It's the timeline. Right. So just in considering this, a couple of questions. If we went with a full year delay, do we have any idea whether we could extend the contract with Amplify to provide us with data for the next school year if we went on a delay with iStation? Do we have any idea whether or not that would be even possible?
The current contract ends August 24th.
It's not possible to extend it, or I don't.
That would be
I really don't know what
legal question.
Sure. Ms. Kamnitz, I think the answer would be the contract expires on August 24th. Certainly, one could do a sole source contract with Amplify, assuming they would be willing to come back to the table. There is likely a need for a legislative fix to make that possible.
That was another question I had, yeah.
But there has been significant interest in this item. But I would see a legislative fix and then a need to sole source a re-up of that contract with Amplify.
There's no possible way to have an answer today as to whether it's as to whether that 1 year delay is possible. With still gathering data.
if someone can get that answer for you today, they are they are underpaid.
We've heard a lot of concern about the effectiveness of the iStation program with some exceptional children, particularly dyslexia, and I'm wondering if that is the case, is the fix for that also being worked on, or whatever we would need to address that problem?
I can take that question. Actually, all of my background is in special education, bachelor's, master's in special ed, and doctorate, and I have looked into this tool extensively to see that it does meet the needs of all the students. We are working with iStation very closely to identify the measures that we would like to use for that particular piece. And I've worked in collaboration with our EC director here, Sherry Thomas, to make sure that that does happen. So yes, we have that under control.
And finally, this is really to
Just one second, Ms. Kamitz, just one second. I just wanted to understand what the answer was there. So that answer is that is not an issue, or it is being mitigated?
It is not an issue. We have, the iStation does provide measures that we can use for that.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. Galloway. Ms. Kamitz, please.
This is really for Chair Davis, and I am still confused about this input that you're getting from the superintendents. I know individually we've heard from several, but as a group, there was input at the meeting on Monday in favor of a one-year delay. And then, but then you're also, did you say you just heard from only the executive committee of the Superintendent's Association in terms of the 6-month plan?
Yeah, so I'll be real clear. So I received an email from Mr. Hoke, the executive director of the Superintendent's Association, earlier this week, stating that they supported a one-year delay by a vote of 88-0. Mm-hmm. Then yesterday I received a subsequent email which says the North Carolina Superintendent's Association supports the time frame listed below for implementation of iStation, which is the 6-month plan that the superintendent referred to. The plan listed below is from Richard Collins, the chairman and CEO of iStation. Mr. Hoke's email further says the issue superintendents have is the timing of the announcement and the implementation schedule. Email below would provide a conducive implementation to the new reading diagnostic tool for teachers. And so that's why I stated that I had received feedback from the superintendents on both plans, both 6-month and 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Mr. Buxton.
Please.
Chair Davis, the latest communication from Mr. Hoke is the one that is saying that and he is the association is the voice of the superintendent. So that's the latest communication about agreeing with the 6-month approach.
Yes, it is the latest, but it doesn't say this time frame as opposed to the 1 year. And since getting this email from Mr. Hoke, received, which I forwarded, a number of emails from superintendents across the state still supporting the 1 year plan who are aware of the 6-month option.
Board members?
The final letter from Mr. Hoke, though, is important to help me frame my vote. Thank you.
Other board members, questions you have?
Well, so for instance, we all got a copy from Chair Davis, I believe, because this was addressed to him, of a letter from the North Carolina Large District Consortium, and it doesn't say anything about the 6-month possibility. I don't think so. We really don't know what the awareness of this option is out there. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I subsequently asked Mr. Hoke had he distributed the 6-month option to superintendents, and my understanding was it had. But to your point, Ms. Kame, it's really difficult since this has been such a fluid situation this week to know exactly when communications passed each other.
Right.
So on that large district superintendent letter, I specifically asked one of the superintendents in a reply, are you aware of this 6-month option? I want to make sure you're aware of it, and he indicated he was.
Yes. Again, unfortunately, there's just some wires getting crossed at this board meeting. On Monday, I presented this plan. This was something developed by the team at DPI, and we put it out there to get feedback from superintendents on if this is a path they would want to pursue. And I'm glad to hear that that feedback has made it back to Chairman Davis from the North Carolina School Superintendents Association, that this would be something we can do to help with a successful implementation. Again, I have already seen posted on the internet on news articles the PowerPoint presentation that I gave on Monday. It very clearly states there what they like to do the middle of the year instead of the beginning of the year. So this absolutely is something that has been discussed, and I'm just glad to hear that there's favorable comments toward it.
Okay, if we have any advisors who have joined us, it would be helpful to hear your ground level perspective and just input that you think we should consider as we understand the best approach to supporting our educators. And I want to be clear here, we're not talking about the tool, iStation, for example, we're just talking about implementing a tool to best position our educators to succeed with our students.
Mr. Buxton, it's Christian Overton here, if I can have the floor.
Great, Mr. Overton, please.
Yes, sir. It seems that we're going down a path. We're talking about implementation of iStation, and I know the time frame, but I've never heard anyone speak about we're transitioning from one platform to another. And I think we're asking a lot of our teachers, our administrators, and our local LEAs to, in a very, seems like hurriedly fashion, to get our educators trained and up and running on a new system. So what I've received back from some feedback from other local board members, superintendents, LEAs, is that we need to delay the implementation of iStation in order to make sure that everyone is trained in a very proper manner so that we don't have a lag or run into any obstacles during training that would decrease the effectiveness of the tool. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Overton. I appreciate it. Do we have any of our superintendents or principals or teachers on the call? Board advisors. Okay.
I'm not a board advisor, but this is Mrs. White, and appreciate the clarity from the superintendent about what transpired earlier this week and the opportunity to poise DPI and all of our districts to have the most successful outlay of this new product for our state. It's not a discussion about whether we're going back to in-class, but how we make the best use of training, and we keep saying implementation. So hearing what I've heard and hearing that Jack Hoke has communicated that the superintendents would be supportive of a 6-month rollout, I think that's where I'm going to land. Let's give our teachers time to see it, feel it, touch it before we start using the metrics. And I think having something new is always hard. Moving from one platform to another is always hard. But I think once they see it, touch it, feel it, they'll realize that it's going to be something very positive.
Thank you, Ms. White. I want to make sure any other board members who haven't had a chance to weigh in or ask questions, just you get those questions answered before we move on.
Mr. Buxton, I have one more question. If
Please,
we,
Ms. Kimmons.
if we go with the 6-month option, does that require going back to the legislature for approval of doing that? Or we would be considered to have followed the letter of the law?
We do not need to have a legislative change to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let me try to summarize where we are. One, we have an administrative action that the superintendent is suggesting that would, and Mr. Superintendent, I want you to make sure I'm phrasing this correctly, that would continue implementation of the iStation reading diagnostic immediately for use in schools for training, and we would essentially continue training during the implementation through the fall before we began to collect any of the diagnostic information, which would be used for EVOS calculations, growth scores, understanding the progress our students might be making. But that we would essentially shift that to December for our year-round schools, January for our traditional August start date schools. But that implementation would be occurring immediately. Is that the correct way to summarize it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buxton. That is correct, and I just want to add that it won't merely be trainings continuing through the fall. The trainings and support are actually something that come with this tool and will always be available. So this tool, as opposed to our K-3 literacy team from DPI having to go out and do the trainings, this tool comes with the trainings and support. That will actually start with the implementation trainings, but it continues throughout the school year and then will be available next school year. So, we'll always be learning with the tool, but I am excited about this launch because I do see a lot of potential for our students to be engaged, and I think teachers will find that some of the reports they will be getting and the materials that come with it will be empowering and give them more information that they can use to help personalize education for our students.
Mr. Buxton?
Okay, I want to.
Mr. Buxton? It's Ms. Kimmons. One thing I'd like to clarify with Mr. Johnson. You said that the teachers that come in for the training this summer that will then go back and be the trainers in their individual schools would receive a stipend. Is there any kind of compensation for the time that many teachers are going to spend on this, learning this system this summer?
No, we do not have the funds available to help with that, but I think I would let Tara chime in right now to let us know those on-demand learnings. Those will be on the internet, and teachers can stream them at their convenience. But Tara, do you have an idea of how long those are?
For the face-to-face trainings, that training is 3 to 4 hours. And what we will do is
right, and that's the one that teachers would receive a stipend for.
Exactly. And what we will do is tape one of those sessions, and we will provide the link for anyone to watch that at their convenience. For the webinars, those are 1 hour in length, and you can attend those live, and they will also be posted to watch at convenience. Those are for technical and for educators, so both audiences. So far, we already have 5 of those scheduled. 2 of them have already happened, and they were very successful. Also, I think it's important for us to note that our focus really is putting the focus on instruction. We want to base all of our instruction on the science of reading, and this tool allows us the time as teachers to do so. So I think that, like Ms. White said, I want to echo that once people get their hands on it, they'll be able to realize the importance of using those critical reading skills to build the kids forward based on the science of reading.
Does the timetable?
Thank you, Sarah. And I do want to, Ms. Canvas, I do want to say now that we have that information, perhaps later on the board and I can discuss. It sounds like the lead teachers who are coming in for the in-person training, they are paid for that, and that is the 3 to 4 hour in-person meeting. Anyone has the option to then go watch that if they want to on demand, and then based on what Ms. Galloway just said. Every teacher who's going to learn how to use this tool will just have to watch the 1 hour on demand. So because it is 1 hour of time, I think a lot of teachers will plan on doing that possibly throughout the summer or August when they're back for teacher work days, that 1 hour program. But that is possibly something that we can discuss on running the numbers of what that stipend would look like for the number of teachers for the 1 hour.
So what I hear you saying is that if a teacher chooses to just wait until until she or he goes back to work in August, that would be time enough to watch that 1 hour. They wouldn't be required to do anything this summer unless they wanted to just look at it.
That is completely accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's completely. I can tell you, just if it was me personally, I would absolutely take the opportunity and watch the 1 hour video to learn about what this tool has to offer.
A quick question. You talking about some of these systems made me think of something that was in, I believe, the large scale superintendent's original letter to us, which is about, and it may have been in a couple of specific school districts, which was about the degree to which they have integrated M-Class into their instructional systems. So when we move forward, I just want to understand the transition time we are giving to them to integrate instructional systems with the new diagnostic and what that means for teachers, but also for our school districts. And this, again, is part of my just trying to understand if we're putting our teachers in the districts in the best position to support their classrooms. Maybe Dr. Galloway, that's a question for you.
Absolutely, I can take that for sure. The iStation provides information for teachers on the same critical reading skills that our other tool previously did. So there would be a seamless integration of that data between the two systems. And teachers will understand that as we move forward with how to use the data to inform instructions. The webinars will focus on that.
Okay, so from an implementation perspective, and I guess it's a little bit of an IT perspective, they'll have time between now and the beginning of the school year to make those adjustments.
Right. The technical teams are already working to get it set up.
I'm talking about the districts.
The districts, right. Yeah, it would be a seamless integration.
Okay, Chair, can I have a word?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just the chair of the committee, Mr. Wallace, but please jump in.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm following protocol. Just to speak on behalf of the districts and the teachers, and as a principal, with this quick implementation over the summer, we have no way of getting our teachers back in to watch any webinars or to do anything. A lot of them unplug over the summer. And not only that, we have a lot of other things we have to do that first week of school when we get there in August. So I don't see, as a school leader, and I know my superintendent's probably having a fit because they have to do even more than I do. I'm over 1,000, but my superintendent's over 15,000 kids, and a large portion of them being elementary. And we're having 15 elementary schools. We got a situation here with implementation and the time to do it. I think that's why the 88 superintendent said, give us that 1 year to prepare. This big of a change to do it over the summer is going to be extremely difficult and provide a serious hardship on the districts across the state. That's just my concern, y'all.
Principal Wallace, I know you joined the call late. Were you listening to the discussion we had before you joined?
I did. No, when I just signed on, I've joined, but I've been following the the actual communique that's been emailed back and forth over the past several weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but we did just discuss how we're going to do a half-year delay on the gathering of data so that teachers can learn as they use it. And again, it is a 1 hour on-demand video that can be watched over the summer or the week before school starts.
Okay, and y'all, and you feel that will be enough as far as to do that big of a implementation?
That is just to get started.
Hold on a second. Go ahead. Mr. Superintendent, please respond to that.
Oh, I have confidence in the team at DPI. I have confidence in the team at iStation. I have confidence in the educators of North Carolina that we will have a successful implementation. This is, again, a very unfortunate time frame that we've been boxed into because while I cannot today go into what caused the canceling of the RFPs twice, I do believe that when the procurement process is officially over and everything is said and done, I have been informed that I can share with everyone why that happened, and I do look forward to sharing with the public any and all information I can as to why this was delayed twice. But we absolutely understand that this is a quick turnaround implementation, which is why we want to go ahead and get into schools, but give all of September, October, November, December to be months where students and teachers are learning this new tool, and then no metrics are measured until January.
Let me ask another question, just so we've got, I think, everyone on the same page. What is the comparative advantage of starting a new tool now versus a year of training in a year? Why, given your point that the department's RFP process backed us into a tight timeline, what is the importance of following through with a tight timeline versus a longer timeline?
Well, first off, we have mentioned that this is not something that is in any of our control. We cannot just take a vote today, nor can I sign any executive order saying we are taking a year delay. There would have to be multiple moving pieces to accomplish that. But I will say this is an exciting tool for North Carolina public schools, and it comes with adaptive content. It comes with many teaching lesson plans that will be based on the needs of students and then recommended to teachers. And it takes less time from instruction. If a teacher wants to continue to doing one-on-one reading with students, then they absolutely will be able to do that. If a teacher wants to do the assessment in a faster manner and then spend more time on instruction, they will have that option as well. While it is unfortunate that we have to do such a quick implementation, I do believe that with, of course, again, the support of the Superintendent's Association, our plan to delay the official measuring of metrics until January gives us a good landing pad to bring this thing into a great launch while getting this new tool out throughout North Carolina.
Mr. Buxton, this is Olivia. Seems like we've got a couple of fixed features here that that is going to cause me to vote for the 6-month model, and that one of the major fixed fixtures is an August 24th deadline. I think that's when the M-Class contract, the contract ends with M-Class. So, and it's already been explained clearly enough to me that it would be like walking on water with the General Assembly to get any adjustment to that. We're adjusting that contractual deadlines. Number two, this is more of an instructional feature advantage that I see in, and I haven't put my hands, I haven't seen iStation. I do want to be able to do a webinar real soon, so I probably need some credentials to do a webinar. But the other thing is, have to go back to like the year 2013. Well, definitely 14, 15. And there was an incredible angst around the state among classroom teachers and curriculum specialists and superintendents about the amount of time that taken away from sheer, pure instruction, so that so much could be done with the assessment of students. So we received, during that period of time, probably 18 months to 2 years, a barrage of emails from superintendents and teachers about not sufficient time given to direct instruction of reading. So I believe that we're going to have the opportunity to allow teachers to do what is called teaching reading and acknowledging and teaching to the science of reading, which is music to my ears from Dr. Galloway. I heard her make that comment a few minutes ago. So I'm ready to, I hope that we can soon call the vote on this.
Okay, let me, Mr. Chairman, I believe it is within the superintendent's authority to pursue an implementation plan with the adjusted timeline that he is now suggesting. It is different than a timeline he has given to us before, but I think it is within his administrative authority to do that. I think there are also some questions about the financial cost that we would find for the delay. I think we would only need to vote if there is a motion for a one-year delay. Otherwise, I think we have a situation where the board has expressed its concern. I don't want to say every board member, but a number of board members have expressed their concern about the compressed timeline. Some advisors have expressed concern. We certainly have received some concern, but we approved iStation, and now we have an implementation plan that the superintendent is suggesting he's going to implement within the next school year. So I don't see we need to vote on his action. But we might want to request, because of the importance of this issue to us, that we have a monthly update on the implementation throughout this school year so we can understand any challenges and the service that's being provided by the department to support the implementation. I'm not sure that requires a vote, but I would put that on the table.
Mr. Buxton,
Mr. Buxton, I agree with your, someone else have a comment?
That was
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Galloway.
That was me.
Yeah, I had. Oh, okay. I can go after. Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Galloway?
I was just saying I can definitely provide the board with an update every month on implementation. And I also can say that iStation and DPI will provide ongoing training and support. So it's not just those initial trainings that we've talked about, but there is ongoing support integrated into the calendar for the upcoming year.
Doctor, could I add to that list? Could you also provide the board with the link to that initial webinar, 1 hour webinar?
That's in the Friday update I sent it to you.
Okay,
Yes,
right.
You will receive that today in the Friday update.
Okay, great.
Did you get it?
Thank you.
Okay.
And I do, just, Chairman Davis and Chair Buxton, just, I'm in the room and no one else is. So I just wanted to let everyone know that joining us today is Superintendent Megan Doyle from Craven County. Mr. Wallace is superintendent, and she is here today listening to this, to the discussion.
Thank you, Superintendent Doyle, for being with us. We appreciate your communication on this issue and some of the concerns you shared as well. And thank you for participating today in your leadership. Mr. Wallace, we'll give you one comment, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Okay, and just wanted to just remind everyone assembled of we're still recovering. I know in Brunswick County and Craven County and the eastern seaboard counties from the storm, and we still got some work to do with that. Just wanted to make sure that Superintendent Johnson and everybody assembled just remember that we're still going through that phase and still trying to return to normalcy here. And moving forward, just make sure you consider those options. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. A really important reminder for all of us about what our school systems are facing. And as we're asking them to kind of build the plane and fly it at the same time as folks are teaching and learning a new tool, obviously we will look forward to, Mr. Chairman, if we can request this updates on a monthly basis, as well as probably we're going to need to get some updates on the protest timeline so we understand if there's any possibility that we're going to be interrupted in implementation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buxton, and I agree with your assessment that I don't think a vote is needed at this time. So without objection, we will just move forward on this item without a vote. Superintendent, I appreciate, and I'm sure the board does, your responsiveness to the input we've received from superintendents and teachers and parents across the state, and your willingness to revise the implementation plan in response to that feedback. I think that's a very positive step towards a further successful implementation of this, and most importantly, reducing risk to the Read to Achieve initiative, the most important policy we have ongoing at this time. So thank you for your work on this. So that concludes our committee reports. We'll now move to voting on consent action on first read and action items. I now ask for a motion to approve the consent items ELS and P1 and EICS 4 through 9. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kamens. Is there a second?
I second Olivia Oxendine.
Second by Dr. Oxendine. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Chasteen?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. I now ask for a motion to approve action on first reading and action items BizOp 1, EICS 1, and 3. Is there a motion?
So moved, Amy White.
Motion by Ms. White. Is there a second?
Second, Chasteen.
Second by Mr. Chasteen. Yes, Mr. Buxton.
Given there's a second, I just want to be clear that the motion on EICS 1 is not to approve. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the recommendation that we received.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Chasteen?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, motion carries. Our final item is EICS 2. Justine,
Has left the conference.
the recommendation was approval of EICS 2. Is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Chair, this is Mrs. White. I move approval on EICS 2, North Carolina Virtual Academy's request to increase its enrollment by 20%.
Support.
Has left the conference.
Motion by Ms. White. Is there a second?
Second, Olivia Oxendine.
A second by Dr. Oxendine. Any discussion? Dr. Townsend Smith?
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
No.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
No.
Chair Davis?
No.
4 to approve, 3 to deny. Motion moves
Motion.
forward.
And motion carries. Thank you. So now we have 2 items of new business before we conclude our open session. The first is an update on the ECATS program, and I'll turn to Ms. Sherry Thomas,
conference.
Exceptional Children's Director, to provide a brief update on ECATS.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to share some really good news. We are scheduled for go live the week of July 15th with ECATS for the special education and the service documentation module.
I apologize for the interruption, but can you speak loudly? I cannot, this isn't music slide, I cannot hear you. So sorry.
We're doing a slide share so that everyone can hear.
My apologies. They've moved me now. Is that better?
That is fantastic. Thank you.
Great. The good news is we are scheduled for go live the week of July 15th with the special education module and the service documentation module, with projected rollout of the MTSS module in the winter of, so late 2019 or early 2020. We have completed the first wave of professional development. That was done the week of June the 10th. And that was held in 5 locations across the state, multiple regions, primarily targeting those districts that have year-round for both special ed and service documentation. We have training resuming on July the 8th. It will go through July the 31st. We have allotted seats for districts based on their ADM and child count, so the largest districts have many more seats because they have many more students and many more schools and many more teachers to train on this. So we've provided what we feel is an adequate number of training opportunities. This is a train the trainer model, and so the districts will go back and push that training down to their local level into the classroom level. One thing we did try to do to help alleviate the burden of attending the training is that we've provided $175 per seat that they were allotted directly to the districts to help cover stipends, travel. If year-round schools are already in place and those folks need to attend, then it would be for substitutes as well. The data migration has gone really well from our former CCAS system, or our old CCAS system, as well as the EdPlan system that many of our counties were using, LEAs were using across the state, that was through PCG as well. So all in all, we have really good news around the rollout of ECATS.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any questions on that item? Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I know that is of immense interest to our districts and schools, so thank you for that update.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. And we would like to offer up, once this is up and running, to maybe do a presentation at a future board meeting so you can actually see it live and in action.
Terrific. Look forward to that. Our final new business item concerns principal pay, and I'll turn to Ms. Schaus and Ms. Holden for this item.
Shifting seats.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Cecilia Holden with the State Board Office, and I have Alexis Schaus with me as well in the event that there are any questions. In the 2018 short session, the General Assembly modified legislation around the principal bonus, and they revised the plan with the intent of the language to promote having high-performing principals who would move and supervise low-performing schools. Low-performing in the specific legislation was referred to as a D or F school. The language as it was written in the 2018 budget was written in a way that led to principals who were in the top 50% of growth
but who actually moved the school from a D or an F to an A, B, or C based on their growth. Those principals did not qualify for the bonus as the language was written. There are about 90 principals who fell into that particular situation, and the bonuses that those principals would qualify for was around $450,000 in total. We did seek a legislative change, but based on the fast pace of the session, the legislator who has been sponsoring that legislation has not been able to move it forward quickly enough. Recognizing that today is the last board meeting for this fiscal year, the request of the board at this time, recognizing that we have some hurdles that we have to overcome, but the request of the board would be that if we're able to overcome a couple of hurdles that I will explain, that we would like the board's approval to move forward with paying those 90 principals the bonuses that would have been earned had they remained a D or F school instead of moving to an A, B, or C school. The hurdles that we anticipate and are trying to work through, number one is we would have to ensure that we have the legal authority for those bonuses to be paid. And the second thing is that OSBM would have to ensure that the funding from this current fiscal year would be able to be used with the constraints that are already in place for paying those bonuses. With that, I will hit pause and see if there are any questions.
This is Olivia, Chairman Davis. I might have missed the constraints. Ms. Holden, you said something about given constraints. What are they?
The two constraints would be, first, we have to ensure that we have the legal authority to pay those principals considering the current legislation. We do have support from key members in the General Assembly to be able to pay this, but we need to make sure that legally the board would have the authority to authorize that. The other constraint would be to ensure that the funding from this fiscal year is still able to be used in the time frame that we have to be able to pay those principals.
Okay, so I suppose that you're looking into how can we can work around those constraints, the legal.
That's correct, and Alexa Schaus is here with me. She's been trying to identify what pathway we may be able to take, considering that today is the 28th. Unfortunately, we're not able to actually authorize this and move it forward without the legal approval to do so. But there are some potential opportunities with existing funds and the way that those are in place right now that we would be able to pay out of existing 2019 or 2018, 2019 funding. So we're trying to make sure that we can do that.
Oh, great. That's good news.
Mr. Chairman, it's JB.
Yes, Mr. Buxton.
So essentially, we've been asking the legislature for language that would confirm what our interpretation of the intent is with regards to these bonuses.
We've been requesting, and there was a bill that was filed this session that would have corrected or clarified the language so that it would have stated that the school had to be a D or an F school for the majority of the 16-17 school year as compared to the majority of the 17-18 school year.
So if we go ahead and make that interpretation
or both,
and essentially get permission to do so, does that become our precedent for how we will be paying these bonuses in the future?
The current budget changes the bonus structure and eliminates a double bonus anyway. So this would just be to clarify the language from last session and last budget, because the bonus structure would change moving forward.
So this is a one-time occurrence?
That's correct.
It's a one-time, and it's consistent with how we will be doing it moving forward.
I think Ms. Schaus wants to.
Yeah, just to be clear, the language would need to be changed to include both the principals who supervise schools that were DOF in both fiscal years. Currently, it is explicit that it is in the 17-18 school year. So the bill that was put through modifies the language to include both. So it's in addition to that's how it adds 90 principals to it. But as Cecilia stated, it is in the conference budget, this program or this particular bonus is discontinued, so it is 1 year.
So how much
Any other
money
questions?
yes, what is the amount of money that we would need?
It would be paid out of existing budget, and it's $450,000 approximately for those 90 principals.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Holden and Ms. Schaus. Is there any objection to this recommendation? Hearing none, we'll move forward accordingly with this recommendation. Ms. Holden and Ms. Schaus, if you could inform us as to the status of this as it continues to move through the legislature.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we go into ask for a motion for closed session, one other comment is we are pleased that in the compromise budget recently released by the Senate and House, the board positions have remained in, and until that is resolved, we will continue to operate status quo with all board positions until a final budget has been approved and signed. So with that, I now request a motion to go into closed session and note for the audience that the meeting will adjourn at the conclusion of closed session. Mr. Duncan.
I apologize, but I don't have a motion. Hold on, excuse me.
Mr. Duncan, check your email from very early this morning.
Okay. Bear with me then. Excuse me. Then I would move that we go into closed session. That the State Board of Education go into closed session to consult with our attorneys to discuss personnel matters. Information is privileged and confidential pursuant to 09 NCAC 06B.0103, confidentiality of solicitation documents, and 09 NCAC 06B.0309, evaluation, and other attorney-client privilege matters, including Hope County versus State Board of North Carolina, State of North Carolina and North Carolina State Board of Education. Apologize for the delay.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Kamitz. Dr. Townsend Smith.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Yes.
Vice Chair, Ms. White?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes. Motion carries. We will now move into closed session, and a note for all those listening that our meeting will end at the conclusion of closed session. We are adjourned.
Thank you.